Okay, all right, we are live. Thank you to anybody who is here. Everybody, this is Peter, my coworker. I've never had a coworker on a stream before, so this is cool. Today, we are going to be talking about, we're doing our presentation from the Tableau conference, which was a month ago, and we both have not looked at it since then, but we know the material super well. So we have a slide presentation, which we'll be going through. And what we're talking about is how we use DevOps in Tableau. So before we get started, I want to say that when I was at the conference, I got a surprisingly huge amount of excitement when I talked to people about how we are using DevOps in Tableau, especially because we're GitLab. And so that's our thing and people were really interested in it. And so that's why I decided to come home and do this stream, especially because it's hard to get to all the sessions you want to at the conference. Not everybody got to it. And what we're doing is really cool. I'm excited about it. And I, a year ago, didn't even know what DevOps was really. So I'm excited to share it with everybody. Peter is going to kick us off on the slides.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll just jump right in. We hope to go through this cleanly and well. It's been a minute since we've run through these slides, but it's fine. So yeah, we want to, I've already lost my train of thought. Hold on. Let's just go ahead and straight to the agenda slide, Annie. Yeah, we're going to start off with the introductions a little bit. We're going to spend a minute talking about what DevOps is and how that works with Tableau. Give you some context about our situation, what we did, kind of just hopefully describe a little bit how well that works. Next. But I don't like keeping people waiting. So here's the answer to kind of the question that's posed in the title. We use DevOps to do more with less by introducing change management and then automating anywhere we could. So that way, we'll go introduction. So I'm Peter Empey. I work at GitLab. I'm an analytics engineer there, one of our lead analytics engineers, and I have a bit of Tableau admin experience. And so I got pulled in when we did our migration. I got pulled in to help. I work mostly on the technical back end now, but I am responsible for some of our Tableau infrastructure, and so that's why I get to come and talk to you about it now. Annie.
Peter is my fixer at work. When I have problems, Peter is the one who fixes them. So just wanted to throw that one out there for this. I am Annie. I am, most of you, if you're on this stream, probably know me, but I'm a data analyst at GitLab. And prior to this, I was a Tableau consultant for about a year. So I saw a lot of different ways that people were using Tableau, which is, we're doing some different things, which is exciting. And so, yeah, I learned a lot about the ways that people are doing Tableau and then the ways that they were failing in doing Tableau. So it's been interesting to come into a very developer heavy organization that is not super familiar with Tableau and see how we're doing it differently. So before we get started, I don't know how many people are in the chat. Sometimes I get a little icon that says there's one person and really there's 100 people. And so I can never tell. But if you're here, say hello in the chat and let us know if you use Tableau. Do you use it primarily as a developer, you're building dashboards and reports, or primarily as an admin? So you're kind of overseeing the management, you're a director or an admin, and you're not necessarily building dashboards day to day. This helps us just as we go through the presentation to know who we are talking to, although this will be recorded. So there's a little bit less customization there from that. The other question that we have is who is familiar with DevOps, using DevOps at their organization, or potentially even using some DevOps principles in the way they do Tableau at their organization. Would love to see that in the chat. Also, the chat is on a 10-second delay. So I can spotlight you, but it won't come in response to direct things that I'm saying. Also, sometimes I don't see questions in the chat. Sometimes LinkedIn doesn't bring through every single comment. So if you say something and I don't bring it through, it's probably because I didn't see it. So those little housekeeping things out of the way. So DevOps, this isn't necessarily a presentation about DevOps. It's really a presentation about how we were inspired by DevOps principles in Tableau. So about a year ago, GitLab decided to migrate into Tableau. And GitLab, all of the functional analysts at GitLab are really good at using SQL. We've got an organization of developers following DevOps principles. And so I wasn't part of these decisions. I wasn't at the company when these decisions were being made, but they said, let's try and bring these DevOps principles into how we are doing Tableau, because that would be better for the organization. And so that is why we care about what DevOps is. So in the kind of sphere of DevOps, there's all of these terms, but you don't need to memorize them. If you don't know what they are, that's okay. These ones in purple are some of the key DevOps terms that we brought in to the way that we're doing things, but we'll talk about them as we go through. So there's no new terms that you need to know in order to understand this presentation. Also, thank you for people in the chat. So we've got admins and developers in the chat. I just want to spotlight some of these because then in the recording, you can see these later. So thank you, everybody who said something in the chat. And this is helpful. I am a dashboard developer primarily. I've been dabbling with admin stuff recently, but Peter is our admin guy. So we have both sides on stage as well. So something that I realized as a Tableau consultant is that a lot of organizations have the same problems in Tableau in terms of the way that they're communicating, the way that they're building dashboards, not necessarily technically, but more of like procedurally and people wise, and they pay with their time, because if you get a dashboard into production that has wrong numbers on it, then all of a sudden you have to scramble to fix it. Or if you deliver a dashboard that you maybe didn't scope super well, you get it to the stakeholders and they're like, I don't like anything about that. Can you just change all of it? That's your time that your company has been paying you that's wasted. So GitLab, again, I wasn't at GitLab when they started this migration, but it tied in really nicely. When I came in, I realized a lot of the principles that they had put into place would be maybe, hopefully, addressing this problem. So we came up with some hypotheses for our migration into Tableau. And the first one was just that we could take communication and collaboration, and really transparency was one of our core values, and use those to create a streamlined scoping and planning process, which means that we'd be delivering better dashboards and saving time. Our second hypothesis was around verify and govern, which are really important in DevOps. We hypothesized that if we could get it right in bringing in these DevOps principles in the way that we do Tableau, it would lead to greater trust from our stakeholders, which means they'd be more likely to engage in what we were doing, actually use Tableau. So I'm going to kick it back over to Peter now to go into the details.
Yeah, when we were asked, we needed to migrate tools. We were kind of at a ceiling. And so we were given some requirements. And so I'm going to go through some of the context of what our situation is, what kind of led us to the decisions that we made, and then a whole bunch of other stuff, like I said at the beginning. So what were some of our primary requirements? We need to improve the trust. There's reasons we'll get into. I'm going to go through each of these in detail. We need to improve the trust. We needed to maintain a certain level of flexibility that we had with the current BI tool, but we also had to improve our scalability as we moved into this new tool. So I'll go through each of these here one at a time. So to improve trust, go ahead and hit the slides. Well, why did we need to improve trust? We had thousands of charts across hundreds of dashboards, each of them with kind of their own SQL query. They're all driven by their own SQL query. This made collaboration hard. This made understanding which one the right one was hard. And we had production ready, if you will, things that are supposed to be for decision making right next to work in progress dashboards. This made it hard to maximize trust. There's kind of like this built-in maximum amount of trust that you can have in a tool like this. We had people making different reports all over the place. They're the same report, different ways. So you get one metric calculated 2 different ways. And so we needed to find a way to mitigate this, improve the trust that people could have, so that when they get a report, they don't have to go, but wait, I saw that report, but it was different. So next one, maintaining flexibility. The tool that we had was really flexible. All you needed to know was a little bit of SQL, and you could go forward and start making charts. You had no idea, the data was already connected, it just worked. One of the things that was really big to us, and this is put it under the flexibility, was we share a lot of our reports publicly. We embed them in our public handbook. And this was simple to do with this tool. You could just generate a URL and embed it directly into the handbook. We needed to maintain a similar level of flexibility for the developers as they migrated and as they used the new tool. On to scalability. While the tool was simple, it was also simple to administer. But it had limitations. For example, you kind of connected to all or nothing for the data. And that meant teams that were using sensitive data weren't able to really participate and use this company-wide BI tool. And so as we were moving to we needed to be able to fold them in. We needed to give them an environment where they could also use the BI tool, because we wanted one unified kind of environment, one place for the BI reporting to go. So what does this look like in Tableau? How did we decide to solve these problems in Tableau? Well, we're going to need a very detailed project and permission structure. We needed multiple sites with different licensing, and we needed to find a way to reduce the administrative burden, because Tableau administration is not simple, just onboarding and offboarding. So let me kind of go through more of the details of our solution, what we did. So for trust, we did things like verifying contents and settings. We left an open space for development. We had to build some custom tools, and I'll go into those in a minute, to help us with some of the automating of our tasks, change management, and yeah, it was a bit of a thing. But I'm going to go through each of these points again one at a time. So how did we improve trust? Our detailed project and permission structure was key to this. First thing we did is we established that we needed to be able to govern things well in Tableau. So that meant a detailed project structure managed by groups. And then what we did is we mirrored that in a repository. We mirrored that whole project structure, and then in each of these folders, we put a text file where we could then list the content. These are written in plain text. What this let us do then is have this repository under version control, and then apply what we called code owners. We can apply very specific reviews to specific folders. We can require approval from certain individuals when changes are made. And this let us put it under change management, where only a few people had access to publish to our production environment, and they were trained to only publish when these reviews were complete. So that is the work that we did. So we know that those reviews, the collaboration happened, that the reviews have happened before it's even in the production space, before it's tagged as being ready for general consumption. Next one, we'll talk about maintaining the flexibility. How did we do this? Well, all of that detailed review cycle, we didn't do it for development. We just said, no, make whatever you need. We didn't want to be a bottleneck. Share, evaluate, share with teams, do it, but know that it wasn't production approved. Did not have that review, so it has to be clear. So leaving that space open for developers was pretty straightforward. Sorry, I got distracted by a question. Yeah, did the developers have to submit Git pull requests to publish workbooks? Yes.
Kind of.
Once again, the structure of it is purely a list of content. The workbooks themselves were not included in the repository. So they would do their development and submit it functionally for review, which would include links to their development workbook. And in that review process, they would make an edit to the text file to list what they want the future state of that project to be. And then that would get reviewed and approved by those specific code owners. I don't want to get too lost into the questions here. I think we'll get to the reviews in a moment. Andy will talk about how well those worked when we come back around to it. But don't let us forget. I want to go back to the flexibility. One of the big things we had to do is, because of licensing, we had to have content shared between two different sites. but we couldn't have developers on both sites. So we created a custom tool that would let developers simply add a tag to a workbook, and then the relevant workbook and data sources would be copied over to a site from which it can be shared publicly. So that was a big lift for us, but we were able to do it. So it's simple, still simple and flexible for the developers themselves. Next one, scalability. This is another part that I really liked. Again, related to our custom tools, but we leaned into infrastructure as code. The entire project structure, permissions, groups, users, site settings, are all planned. Some of those are planned, but some of them are out functioning right now to be managed with the custom tool. So we would list them out, what they're supposed to be in a text file, put that text file in a repository, put that under change management. So when we want to add a new user, we go and we add it to this text file. We want to add that person to a group, we add it to this text file. We want to change a site configuration, we add it to this text file. Even if we're just manually going and changing some of these things, for example, a site setting isn't actually configured by this tool right now, but we still change the site settings. And this allows those changes to be reviewed, put under change management, so that we know what's happening and we can document that and ultimately get it so that a whole team of people can add users or groups or change the project structure, and anybody could submit a change to request a new project, for example. And it can be reviewed by a few groups of people and then approved. And once it's approved, it just makes the site changes. So we don't have to have a whole team of administrators going through knowing how to properly configure permissions or anything like that. It's all set up with a custom tool. So let me summarize kind of what I said and hand it back over. Then I'll hand it back over to Annie. We put all of our site settings and our content under configuration management, under change management, so that we could enforce reviews and so that we could kind of spread out the reviews across, one, the right people, and two, more than just a single administrator. And that's kind of one way to reduce the administrative burden. All of our resources for this are public, including the code for our custom tool. You can find it in our repository. I think Annie's already linked some of this out in some of her posts. And yeah, so I'll turn it back over to Annie to talk about how well this worked for us.
Yeah, also the questions, I saw them. I hypothesized that one of the LinkedIn users there is Phil due to the y'all. So if it is Phil, hello. Phil used to be my boss at my last job and he said he was coming. So everybody knows. So I will talk a little bit about that stuff. So the first thing I realized after we did this presentation at the conference, that we actually have two kind of swim lanes of DevOps principles being used. We have the technical one, which Peter just went over, but then also our organization, like people processes wise, are very friendly to DevOps, this kind of collaboration and everything. We use GitLab for a lot of these things, like the product GitLab, but this isn't a product pitch for GitLab because you could do it with other things. We just have done it with GitLab. And I personally have become a big believer in using GitLab for managing the whole Tableau process. So first of all, this collaboration and communication made simple. We're doing this in GitLab. And so what I really love about this is that we have, if we have a project, I'm just finishing a project right now, which has been going on for months and months and months. And where do we normally communicate about projects? At my last job, I was a consultant. It was like a lot of emails, and there'd be like these chains of emails, which you like had to dig in. I've heard some people have like these kind of Slack channels that things are all over the place and they're in DMs. And then if you want to bring in somebody from another department to comment on something, it's really hard to like get them in there and then to keep track of that. And so using these DevOps principles and using GitLab, having this one central place where we communicate, has been really cool. So GitLab has these things called epics, which are kind of like projects. And then within them, you have these things called issues, which are kind of like documents, which is what we're seeing right here. And so you can communicate right in an issue with all of your relevant stakeholders. And so you have at the top of it any needed materials or description, whatever it is. You can have relevant links, you can have screenshots. You can have tags and milestones and dates on all these things. But then the meat of it is that you have this conversation going on right here in the issue. And so I might say, okay, I'm having this problem. And then we might tag in the VP of sales and the VP of marketing. And then they might tag functional analysts on their team. And then they might say, oh, well, this person from billing knows about this thing. And all the comments are right there. So the project that I've been working on for like months started with like one business stakeholder as our like primary user. And then like they got promoted. So then it moved on to someone else. And so we had the whole history of the project. So when someone new came into the project, we had consultants in there for a while. They can get up to speed looking at the comments on the issue, and everything is in one place. Something that I realized as I was talking to people at the conference about this is another big thing about having things in the same place is we use a tool called DBT, which is where I'm oversimplifying it, but you can like write SQL code and then have documentation. And we use GitLab for that, right? We have this kind of process of like reviews. And so if you want to submit new SQL code for a report table, it gets like reviewed by the official code owners and then pushed. It's got the whole DevOps things going on. All of that is happening in the same place as these communications for issues. And so if I have a change that needs to be made to a report table or a table that's feeding one of my dashboards, I have the issue where I'm talking about these things, and then I can link right to the merge request. And then in the merge request, you can see the code, SQL code that's being changed. And so having everything in the same place is very DevOps friendly. And it's all under change management. And so we can see, oh, this got changed. You know, we just redefined how we're calculating revenue. And you can see all of that, which I think has been like just really helpful. And I've never now delivered a dashboard, like a first version of a dashboard, and had stakeholders be like, oh, that's not what I wanted at all. Because everyone's really clear on what we're actually scoping out. So the second thing is this verify and govern. And I will admit, I was very skeptical about this merge request in order to publish a dashboard thing. It seemed like just this random extra layer of verification. So what's happening here, to address the questions from before? I don't know Git. I mean, I like theoretically could probably figure it out, have used it once or twice, but I don't know Git. GitLab has a user interface, which is got buttons, right? Like these quick clickable buttons. And so for me, as a developer, when I have something that I want to submit to production, like if I want to submit a dashboard, I can find the YAML text file. That's the name of the file. YAML is kind of like JSON, like it's the name of a file. I can find that. I can edit it right in the user interface, which is all clicking buttons, no Git pull requests, anything like that. There's already a defined template that I just fill out and follow that. You have to follow the spaces very carefully. I learned it has to be exact on the spaces. Peter helped me with that one day when I was like deep in the rabbit hole of problems. So fill that out, and just the relevant information that we need to know, like who's the code owner, who's the project owner and stuff. And then you've got this merge request that's open. And then similarly to how I just showed, you've got a merge request, which looks a lot like an issue, honestly. But it has this approve button. And so your reviewers can come in and they can say, hey, I looked at the dashboard and, you know, I'm just not sure about how we're calculating win rate. Can you take a second look at that? They can include screenshots, they can link to documents, whatever it might be. So you can have the conversation right there in the merge request. And then when they, like, let's say the VP of sales, VP of marketing, and VP of finance are our like official reviewers that need to approve before we can publish it to the go-to-market folder. Once they have hit approve and they have we've gotten 3 needed approvals, only then can we publish it to production. So right now, Peter is, and you guys can ask questions about this if you want, but Peter's working on having it automatically published to production once it has those reviews. But right now, I'm an admin, so theoretically I can do whatever I want, but normal developers who are not admins cannot even publish things to production. So an admin will not publish your dashboard to production until you've gotten the necessary approvals of the project leaders. And I love this now because the trust has just skyrocketed, because now it's like, if something's wrong on that dashboard, like it's not on me, the developer. I mean, it is kind of, but like the VP of sales, marketing, finance all signed off on it, which means their analysts signed off on it. And so you catch a lot of things. It's much more serious of a review, right? They're not just emailing you and saying, yeah, sure, go ahead and publish it. Like they know that when they hit that approve button, like they're on the line and saying like, yes, you can report these numbers. And my team agrees with the numbers that are being reported. And so it's very official in that way. And the flip side of that is now, instead of having analysts like previously we had, where they'd be like, hey, how can I, like, what SQL code are you using that I can produce these results myself and make my own dashboard? Now we have this kind of central workbook that, let's say for this project I'm just finishing now, where other teams are saying, how can I repoint what I'm doing to be using your data source and your tables, because they just trust that what we have done is right. And especially when you're in the new stages of migrating to a new BI tool, that the early wins of having your stakeholders trust you right away is like a really big win. And not everybody gets that when they first get into Tableau. So I have become a developer for that reason. Feel free to ask more questions, especially if you have questions about the code and stuff. I'm always around on LinkedIn, but Peter is not. So now is your window into it. So that's the overview of it. The last thing I just want to add is, when I was showing this slide at the conference, I had some people get really excited about this. And they're like, how do you get your stakeholders to like participate? Like, I can't imagine a VP of marketing at my organization participating. And it made us recognize that we are lucky that we do have, we have kind of an organization that's trained to participate, right? Like, we had the CEO saying, I want us to get Tableau and I want people to be using it. And so VPs, like, it's up, the onus is on them to come in here and actually communicate, because otherwise, if I get, let's say, a cross-functional go-to-market dashboard into production and the sales leaders haven't had anything to do with the process, and then it doesn't reflect their numbers, then they look bad. So it's been the people processes. We already had a lot of good DevOps friendly people processes in place, but the code stuff and the automations and the CI/CD that Peter has done has been new and exciting things. So I can see some things. Yay, buttons. So like how I was saying, how the user interface has buttons. I love that. I also love that. If we had to be doing like Git pull requests and like doing like writing code to do this process, then we would, I don't know, Peter, how many developers do you think would actually be participating in that process?
Fewer for sure.
This question. Hi, very interesting discussion on using Git for Tableau change management. I jumped in a little late here, but how do you manage incoming requests? Is there a ticketing system of sorts that you're using, which is integrated into this whole workflow? Peter, do you want to get started?
Yeah. GitLab will manage a little bit of that. Mostly we just assign it to the right people. So the developer will create their own issue whenever they want to publish it. So it's not a submit, it's a go in and take an action, create it. There's a template that they then fill out, which then gets assigned. So they can either, there is a request template if they, we can have a lower barrier to entry, but ultimately it ends up in this merge request or issue, where then the appropriate people are tagged for reviews. And so it's just, again, maybe it's part of our work culture, but when we get tagged for a review, that's part of what we do. It's like, oh, I've been asked to do a review, so I go do it. It's just kind of, it's for us, it's part of our expected culture. But no, there isn't any kind of formal ticketing system other than the fact that they create an issue. And so that kind of works as a ticketing system.
Well, also, like, for those who haven't used GitLab, and again, you could do this not using GitLab, but for us, like, we have this, like, in GitLab, the product, we have like this little thing that says like issues that have been assigned to you, and then like merge requests that have been assigned for you to review, and like it's right there. And then we, like, that's like a, like, all of us, like, that's how we keep track of the work that we need to do. And so it's, it's not just out there in the ether. As soon as you assign someone, it like goes into their tasks that they need to be doing. I was actually nervous at first when I first started to be assigning like the VP of sales as a reviewer on my stuff, because it felt very, very big for me as a new analyst to be like, VP of sales, you've been assigned by me to do this thing. But that's how the workflow works. This one, what is the template? What's in the template that developers have to fill out to submit merge request? So that YAML file.
Yeah, and a lot of it, the template is the information that people will need to do a review also. So we put a link, we're all in Tableau Cloud. And so we put a link to the workbook. We have questions about where does this project live? Who should review it? Does this need to be reviewed by finance, sales, and marketing? Mm-hmm. So they're kind of expected to know these things. Where is it going to live? And then so part of that means is that the change, so that's like the information in the template. And then also some of that information gets translated directly into the YAML. So that's like that template for the discussion. And then there is a template for, you can see it there. When we add the information to the YAML file, to the text file that we're managing, it could be something as simple as what's the name and when was it last updated, who's the owner. We can go farther. Do we have data classifications? We can put whatever we want in there, really, because it's just a text list. We're not really doing anything procedurally with this yet, although we have plans. But we're using this as a form of documentation. Who's the owner? If there's a problem, who should we call? Because the owner of the workbook on Tableau may not reflect who the actual business owner is. So we use this as an additional way to kind of template that out and collect any information that we might need.
Yeah. So Peter, because we don't have any other questions in the chat, but please, if you have them, let us know. A question that I know that we got asked at the conference is just like, how has this gone? Like, has there been friction for you in implementing with this in Tableau? Like the actual technical stuff, has the users, like how has the actually like designing this new process for getting some kind of CI/CD into Tableau, which is continuous integration, continuous development. You don't even know those words, but getting those things into Tableau, has there been friction? Has it been doable? And like, if other people wanted to repeat it, do you think it would be friction, doable?
So I received some friction from developers who are used to managing their own permissions. They're like, I just need to give permission to this. Can you make me the project lead? Or why can't I change the permissions on my own workbook? I want to share it with somebody, but only this person. So there's some friction there. And it's like, no, this is all managed by a process. It's all hands off. If you want to add them, you need to be a member of a group and they need to submit an access request. It feels really heavy, but so there's some friction there, and it is heavy. It is friction on purpose. It's purposeful friction and that's part of governance. I don't think anyone who's trying to implement a governing system knows that. I mean, it's the whole point is to add friction. Other places there are technical friction. We really had to work extra hard to get Tableau to do what we wanted, and we're kind of skirting around the edges of what it can do and what it can do well. Technically speaking, I'm thinking of like managing content between sites. So if you don't have to do that, don't. So there's some friction there. Because of our culture, we didn't have a lot of friction implementing like the approval processes. I think people maybe are surprised to learn that it was there. But once they knew it was there, they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Because we already do it for so much. We're already encouraged to collaborate and communicate that way. This is just a variation on a theme for most people that I've worked with in GitLab. But I mean, I had people, when I was leaving the conference, and people come up to me in the airports like, could I do this with Bitbucket and Jira? I'm like, yeah, why not? If you can get people to collaborate and and make an approval process, it's all, because then at that point it's just configuration management. So it's whatever your team is used to doing. There are tools that make it easier, but it's really the friction of implementing those processes that you might get stuck with. And so if you're already used to doing some process like that, this would be just another variation on the theme for you.
So if somebody wanted to implement what you've done with using the text files to get users into groups, which by the way, if Peter hadn't done that, I would have been spending more of my time on those things. So thank you, Peter. But like the implementing, getting users into groups and implementing some change management into the processes of the publication of the workbooks and stuff, what skills, like technical skills, would like a Tableau admin need to do? We have all of our code in our public repository, so you can get all that stuff. So what technical skills would someone need to take that and translate it into their instance of GitLab or otherwise outside of GitLab?
Yeah, we've written it up as a Python library package. And so you really just need a way to orchestrate that. However you can or want to orchestrate that, you need to be familiar with I'm not going to list all the ways you could orchestrate something, but that's what it would require. Or even if you just want to run it manually. You just wake up every morning, the first thing of your day is to run that. That's fine. It's really just a Python package that reads the site and it reads the file and it makes the site match the file. Mm-hmm. That's really all that it's doing. And so that's where I missed this in my script already. Again, single source of truth is now the file, not the site.
Hmm. So this one, how does this process help maintain version control of Tableau workbooks? So one thing before we get going on that, I have an idea that I brought to Peter after the conference, and I said, it would be really interesting if we could, as part of this file, have all of the calculated fields in the workbook be like in a text file, and then GitLab will give you diffs, like if you change it. And so each time, because again, a developer can't make changes to their workbooks in production, an admin has to do it. And so you have to submit an issue, it has to go through the process. And so each time there's material changes to the numbers in a workbook, you have to submit a new issue. So first of all, we have that kind of change management of like, anything that's going to change the numbers in a workbook, you need to submit an issue to say, and we have now a structure where you can have a project, an epic for that. And so then each time it's changed, you can see the issues that are even closed out and finished underneath it. But I think it'd be really cool if we could have all the calculated fields. So then if you have, some change to average in a calculated field, GitLab would show you in the diffs and even highlights, in this field, some change to average. Do you have any more on that version controlling?
Yeah, I think what you hit on it was those things in production can't be changed by a random developer. The number of people that can publish and make edits in production is limited. We have some flexibility, like we tell our developers, like if there's a spelling error or you missed applying a color palette or whatever, I'm like, yeah, I'll give you permission, go in and change it, and I'll take away the permission, right? We're not so rigid. But yeah, if there's a material change, if you're versioning the workbook, then yeah, submit a new request, have it re-reviewed. That's how we use the process to manage version control of workbooks.
This one, realizing this is a cultural thing at heart, but how do you handle urgent requests for ad hoc needs with a very quick turnaround demands from senior leaders? Have you found this process to be sort of naturally mitigate the tendency, or do people still have sometimes unrealistic demands? Do you have any thoughts on this?
Short version is we don't stand in their way. They can make whatever dashboard they want or share it with whoever they want. It's in development. If it's that urgent and that you can't go through the process, that means you can't have it reviewed. Fine, go do the thing you need to do. Don't let us stand in the way. Just know that if you come back to the BI team and say this number's wrong, we'll say, well, that's in development. I can't validate that the number was ever right.
Mm-hmm.
So it spins up that cycle, but it kind of delays it. Maybe it kicks it down the road a little bit, but that's kind of how we mitigate that. Because we're a small BI team. When we started this, we were going to have one person on the BI team, and so it's like they don't have time to go and review. Reviews were going to happen like once a week, and so if you don't have time for that, great, don't do it.
Yeah. Also, I have a dashboard that is quickly become one of the most viewed dashboards of the company. And it is viewed by senior leaders, and they do care a lot about what's on it, and they have upgrades that they want to be made. So it has been a little bit stressful for me, and learning, I think that's kind of just a development thing for me, as personally, learning to be able to kind of say, okay, this is our process. I'm the dashboard developer. I can write test SQL, but I have an analytics engineer that needs to officially get things through DBT. I'm not going to put a dimension into this dashboard until sales, marketing, and finance has agreed that dimension is how we're defining it. And my bosses, I love working at GitLab. My bosses they'll back me up 100%, which is helpful too. So like Peter said, we have development, we have ad hoc, we have places where you can, if you need something quickly, you can ask functional analysts, which is like a sales analyst or marketing analyst, to spin it up quickly. But if you want changes to the production stuff, you're going to have to wait until we get the approvals. We can sometimes prioritize it and say we're going to move other things to prioritize it. But this one, do you use the internal Postgres database from Tableau server cloud in this case for anything in this process?
So when you're on cloud, you don't have access to the database. You get a summarization called Admin Insights that Tableau will produce for you. We do use it, but it's delayed. It's different. It's less. There's less information specifically on permissions. I've used it. I've used the database before for stuff like this, and I wish I had more direct access to everything in the database. But no, I guess is the short answer.
I wish is the longer answer.
I wish, yeah.
This one, how do you manage your on-prem data sources through Tableau Bridge? We are considering standing up another Bridge machine to help reduce bottlenecks for the morning refreshers.
I unfortunately won't have a lot of feedback on this because we don't have an on-prem. We don't have, we're doing everything through cloud things. Let me think if I have any insights on how that would work. I just am not super familiar with Bridge or the configuration. I don't know how much of that configuration will show up in APIs and so forth. But that's kind of where I would hope that that information could live, is that you could then put those configurations under a similar change management, so that they wouldn't get changed accidentally or without notice or without review. But I'd have to look and see you'd have to really look and see what site settings and configuration changes are available, kind of from an API perspective, assuming this is all again on cloud. And unfortunately, I just don't have a lot of experience with Bridge. Otherwise, I hopefully give you more.
Yeah, give Peter like a week with Bridge, and then he'll have an answer for you.
Give me a minute.
This one, just if your management is going to back you up, don't put the requirement in the first place. Something I love about my job is I have full confidence that if a requirement's in place, we work very handbook first. So like if it's in our handbook, like that's good as gold. If we say this is how we do it in our handbook, then like you can point back to that and be like, this is how we do it, period. So we got this question: do you make use of the data management features in Tableau Cloud to complement your Git process? For example, showing when a dashboard has pending changes or known issue, etc.
Short answer, no. We're not using the data quality flags and data management flags right now. We would want them to be automated, and we haven't. The only connection right now we have for automation regarding that is we have a tool called Monte Carlo. It's a data observability. So if a job fails, if the data is stale, it can kind of downstream tag everything. But we only use those tags right now for highlighting if information should be kept sensitive. And those are applied manually right now.
Yeah, it took me a while to figure out how they were applied manually. Do you want to briefly mention how that?
Oh, it's another admin thing, like where you can go and apply a sensitive tag. We apply them right now on data sources and let them promulgate, so they can show up on the workbooks.
Yeah, something that I really like that we're doing, which I think is a Monte Carlo thing, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that if you are making a change in SQL to a column, it can tell you, hey, this is used in Tableau, so it might cause problems. That's a Monte Carlo thing, right?
Yeah, it lets us trace the column level lineage. So when we're making changes on a database table, we can be warned and say, by the way, there's 50 dashboards in Tableau, 50 charts in Tableau that are using that column, or at least that database table. You should better go check and make sure that's not a breaking change.
Yeah, because if you like change the column name or something, then Tableau will just stop working.
All on its face.
I've experienced that. Yeah, overall, again, if you have more questions, put them in the chat. But overall, it's been really interesting to come into this because I was in this kind of world of like Tableau. Like I really just knew how to use Tableau. And then to come into GitLab, everyone's like SQL. And then you've got like Peter has got some of the other things going on, and you've got an organization of developers. And to see those kind of two worlds come together, I never before was putting thought into like how having this verification and governance would increase your trust with your stakeholders. And I didn't know a ton of SQL. And so thinking about, how can we get this custom SQL that you're using and actually promote it into DBT, like into a report table. And, if you have all these stacked LODs on top of each other in Tableau and you're hacking this thing in this way, how can we take that and actually bring it up into the database? So then we've got someone who can manage it. And I think it's been really enlightening for me to realize that this means that I, as the developer, have a lot more language and like flexibility to talk to the other people in my organization who aren't using Tableau. So a lot of times as a Tableau developer, you're talking to people who don't know Tableau, whether you're talking to business users or you're talking to developers who know SQL. Sure, you can produce a crosstab in Tableau and say, like, this is how I'm doing this thing. But being able to pull it back and say, okay, we've got change management. Managers love to hear that we've got this kind of observability and change management. And hey, look, I can troubleshoot all this stuff in SQL and give you SQL outputs. It has changed the game really on communication for me. So I've learned a lot from like just us being developers. Developer friendly. I'm not a developer, but like a developer. But
You're a developer. Tableau dashboards.
Tableau developer, not otherwise developer. So
to be fair, that is something that we certainly took advantage of. That this is all managed by our data team.
Mm-hmm.
we don't have to interface with IT to set up the database or make a change to database tables. So we are totally taking advantage of that throughout our whole stack. And that's why, these changes that we do for Tableau, implementing the change management, they're really like, again, I'll use the phrase again, variation on a theme for what we were already doing within the data team. We used the trust that our data team already had with the organization to say, now I need you to do this also. And I won't be ashamed for taking advantage of the resources available to me. So it made implementation of these processes easier, but it doesn't mean that processes can't work other ways.
So what are the things that we just recently hired a BI admin. So what are the things that the BI admin will be in charge of in this process versus the engineers in the data team?
BI admin is going to be in charge of one of the final reviews, probably for publication. We kind of break out the reviews. There's the subject matter expert reviews. We need the sales team to review it. And then there's like a top layer of, are you configuring the workbook the way we need to? So is it connecting to the right database tables? Are you publishing it right? You can't slip in custom SQL queries and have it be in production. We have some standards. And so like a BI admin is going to do the final review of those standards or be part of the review process of those standards. And they'll be the ones ultimately hitting the button, the final button to say, yes, I accept this change. They'll also be probably reviewing group changes. So they'll be reviewing changes to those schema files, the specification files that add people to groups. They'll be reviewing those, and again, hitting the final accept button. But from to me, that's how they're going to be interfacing with this process, is being those final reviews. They have a lot of other work to do from adoption and education and stuff. So actually adding groups and changing permissions on projects and workbooks is something I want them to do the least. I want to automate that away so that they can do the review, come in the morning, review all the changes, hit accept, and then they can go about and help with adoption and help train people. That's what I want our BI admin to be working on.
How about the data engineering team? What are they doing in this Tableau thing?
Yeah, right now they are part of the review process for adding new users, just because they were used to doing it with their old tool. I think that they've realized that this is a lot more intensive. We'll probably be pulling them back from that and have it just be the BI admin making those changes. But they were the ones reviewing new onboarding requests. I need access to Tableau. And they would review that and do all the changes necessary. But yeah, that might get pulled back from the data engineers, but that's what they're doing right now.
Yeah, the custom tools, all of the code, and I will put a link into the event on LinkedIn and then in the comments in the description of the YouTube file. But all of our code for all this stuff is public. So GitLab does this thing, public by default is one of our mottos. And so our code repository for all of this, you could call it Tableau Conman, right?
Yeah, that's the name of the Python tool that we've made.
Yeah.
Tableau Configuration and Management, short.
Yeah, all available in our public handbook. So if you need it right now, you can Google GitLab handbook Tableau Conman, and I imagine it might come up, right?
Yeah, definitely GitLab handbook, data team.
Yeah.
GitLab handbook Tableau. You'll find our primary source, and I think Conman has some links in there. It's in a public repository, so if you search for Tableau Conman, kind of one word, you should be able to find it.
Yeah. Also on the subject of access requests, all of this is in the same system. So we have GitLab for the access requests too. So when a new team member comes on board, they submit their access requests as any organization does access requests, and it just needs certain tags on it when it's manager approved and ready to go, and then it'll get picked up. This is what the data platform team is doing right now that we might shift around, but again, to keep that kind of the collaboration and communication principle there. The same place that you have issues and MR requests is where the access requests are happening. So it doesn't really help us anything that those are in the same place, but it is nice that everything is kind of
familiarity, at least,
in the same system. We also have So we have our Tableau developer guide on our handbook, which is public. So we have like our kind of everything laid out about how we do Tableau, like for, I'd say more the management on a page. And then we have next one down is tips and tricks for developers. So something that's unique about GitLab is that we are 100% remote and all over the world. And so we've done all of this remotely without being in the same place physically as each other. And so that means a lot of documentation. So some things that GitLab does that I think is on the kind of people processes side of DevOps is when we have meetings, we try and do asynchronous by default. So if we don't have anything to talk about in a meeting, we cancel the meeting. For all the meetings that we have an agenda. And when you're talking in a meeting, somebody else will be like typing up what you're saying. So we actually keep track of that because we have team members in India and Australia and the United States and the Netherlands, all over the place. Also, we have a Slack channel. So the first place of like questions for developers is this data Tableau Slack channel. And that is where we get a lot of questions about access requests in there, or like why is this thing not loading? But if we're saying, where can I find? Is there a dashboard for this by this? That goes in there. Or I can't figure out how to get this thing to work. Does anybody have any 5 minutes to sound off of? And so the collaboration is there. We don't use emails.
We just had a conversation about when does the week start.
Yes.
Right. And we just had a conversation that all the developers were just chiming in saying, hey, when should we start on Sundays or Mondays? Well, this other system starts on Fridays. Well, that's weird. Let's not do that. We just kind of back and forth conversation.
Yeah. What was the conversation that right as we were preparing for the conference, you almost stopped up all of your stuff?
Yeah. I almost trashed the entire presentation just to talk about this. The sales analyst team learned about this process. They had been making dashboards in development. And they're like, oh, wait, there's a whole process to get this approved. And they submitted a dashboard to get reviewed and approved. And it needed approvals from sales, marketing, and finance. And for like a solid week, there was this continuous back and forth. Like, oh, yeah, can you check this? Hey, I think your calculation doesn't match mine. Let's change this, change this, change this. And they came to a consensus on. And so now the sales team's dashboard matches the finance's dashboard for the same number. And the marketing's chiming in and saying, yep, that looks great. It matches what we're saying. And it was fantastic. I mean, from my experience as a BI developer, it's like that was unheard of to get all three completely different departments, analysts just jumping in and talking with each other and coming to consensus, coming to the right answer. No one in GitLab, we talk about strong opinions loosely held and short toes. No one's getting bullied. Everyone felt confident and empowered to go in and talk about what they needed and say, no, I don't think that's right. Here, try this. No one was holding on to it and saying, no, this has to be the right way. Everyone was willing to listen and learn. Yeah. One thing I want to mention about our code, I just remembered as we were talking about the last thing. Tableau Command is like version 0. Mm-hmm. It is very much the code that we wrote to manage an internal process. We would love to get it elevated to the point where it is a community-driven project. If other people find it valuable and want to contribute and elevate it to that kind of level, we'll continue to operate it and maintain it. But we did kind of open it up publicly so that it could be used generically or used more broadly.
Yeah. I mean, so for the code that you've got there, anybody could just get a free GitLab account and then submit a merge request or something for it, right?
We're still working on all the collaboration processes, if you will. Yeah. And we'll figure those all out as people want to see more. But it's available right now for use for forking, and we're basically waiting for people to kind of reach out to us and ask if they want to contribute. But yeah, there'll be methods for us. We would be happy to review contributions from the community.
Yeah, on the subject you were saying with all the different teams agreeing on something, I had a similar experience yesterday where one dashboard wasn't matching another one when we expected it would be. And it was really it was just a reminder of this process that works really well for us, because the issue initially was like, okay, we have this problem, let's raise it in Slack. And it's like, okay, let's get an issue open for this. And then you can get an MR, merge request, open for this. And then these can talk to each other. And then the issue exists in the project. And so in the future, if we want to go to that project called Epic, we can see it when it's been closed out. Oh, this was a change that got made at this point in time. So all of those things kind of all working together in the same sphere. And I find like now that I've gotten used to the process, it's much more organized. Like it feels much more organized in terms of like you can be communicating with other people while you're problem solving and have all of those things there while also doing your own thing. Because a lot of times when you hit a bug, it's like, oh my gosh, all right, I need to dive in, and then all of a sudden you're making all these crosstabs. You don't know what they are. You're writing this SQL code that gets lost, which you can come up with organization processes for that, which is something that I'm still learning to do just as a data analyst to kind of organize my troubleshooting. But then layering into that, being like, reaching out to someone like Peter and being like, Peter, what the heck? I have no idea how a union works. I thought I did, but I didn't know. Those all can live in the same place. This is a question. Is it part of your production workflow to do a walk through the final dashboard with the stakeholders? What other tips do you have for release and end user adoption? You can start on this one, Peter.
Yeah, you might have some more input on it than me, but the process that we designed was that it can be all reviewed at the end. You can tag subject matter experts, end users. You can do user acceptance testing there as part of the change management, that final review step. It can all just happen there. If you are submitting a dashboard that is supposed to be company level KPIs, who should review that? Who should approve that before it goes out? Get them to look at it. And if they don't look at it, don't publish it.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what we do. That's kind of the process. So we get that kind of almost executive sponsorship. It's like, this is what we wanted. Are you guys going to use it? Because if you're not using it, we're wasting our time publishing it, right? We kind of asked those questions at that gate. That was kind of the thought process: is what's the final gate? Mm-hmm. All right, if we can't control everything upstream, let's control this final gate before it's in production. Have everyone look at it. Have everyone agree that this is what we want. There's always going to be people that don't adopt things. People are just going, yeah, give me that. Whenever you're working with finance, they always just want a data table. You're not going to get them to change. Even if you put in the fancy, really nice visualization, they still want a data table. Mm-hmm. So don't worry about it. But them having looked at it and accepted it is kind of the tips that I would give, is making sure it's what they want. If you only give the finance a chart and not a data table, they're not going to use it. Yeah. And you need to know that about your finance team. If I'm speaking generically for all finance teams, so forgive me, but that's every finance team I've ever worked with. But know your audience, I guess, is the tip, and include them in the review process.
Mm-hmm. So procedurally, the only hard line that we have on this is they have to hit that approve button. The project leaders have to hit the approve button in order for a dashboard to make it into production. When we first started this process, we were still getting used to it ourselves, our templates and our processes and stuff. And when I went and asked for reviews, so the way that the process we normally follow is, first we have a scoping process, which we'll go through and just get kind of in the issue. So the official approve button, just approval from each of the teams that like the proposed mockup. I use Figma or something called Lucidchart for doing my mockups. So the first stage of the process, we get alignment on, we know what we want to have in the dashboard, and kind of in parallel, these conversations about the data sources is happening. And then we get to, we'll deliver the dashboard and we'll do usually a walkthrough, but we haven't verified the numbers yet. This is okay, does the dashboard look right to you? Some of the numbers might be a little bit off. Don't get worried about that. Is this what we were expecting with the dashboard? And this is where we're going to look for approval. Again, still in an issue, not an official merge request, but we know that it's coming. And then we officially, once the numbers all tie out, then is where we do the merge request. What I found was requesting reviews from stakeholders. We would start with the analysts and then they'd bump it up to their bosses when they were feeling good. We didn't get a lot of responses, and it felt like a couple of weeks of like chasing people down. And that's because a lot of our teams at GitLab work in like 2-week iterations, and we plan out how many things you're going to have to do. So our plates are already full. And so now if like it's the beginning of June and I'm working on a project and I know that probably at the end of June is when I am set to have this, that I'm going to want their review, I'll say to the stakeholders ahead of time, hey, at the end of June, I'm going to be looking for a review from you. So please block out the time at the end of June in order to review this dashboard. And that was really, really helpful, because then as long as they blocked the time, they were actually happy to participate. And sometimes finance will be like, hey, we have a really big thing that's going to happen at that point in time. Can I do it the previous week or the following week? So that communication ahead of time. And then something that I've just started doing is for the adoption, I've realized that yes, it's good to have a walkthrough. So any executives or anything with a dashboard have a walkthrough that is recorded, that you can have a link in the agenda. We use our agendas. So you can have a link in the agenda for people to go back to later, or if they couldn't participate in it. I also I have one project that I just finished, which is super complicated. It's like 3D because there's like so many different dates. So I actually made a sample like starter workbook that like if somebody was an explorer, so they have permission to like create some things in Tableau, but not like create brand new data sources and stuff. They can connect to my data source. They have a workbook that has like how to make a table, how to make a line chart with the correct dates. And I actually expose the captions, which you almost never see in Tableau, which gives kind of some documentation on how you can make the swaps. And then I made a slide deck because we know executives are familiar with slide decks. So I made a slide deck to go along with it that just kind of explained, I put things into folders. Something else that I found really helpful for other people using my work, for using the Tableau data sources, because that's our goal, right? Rather than everyone having their own, we're all kind of centralizing around data sources. In Tableau, you can't control the order of your folders, and you can't have like sub-nested folders. So what I did is I put a prefix. So I did like folder 1 dot date axis, 2 dot pipeline generation metrics. And so and then Tableau will have it in that order of the numbering. And if things are maybe at the same level, I could have 4, 4, 4. So those are some just like tips that I have for the adoption of like going through the process. And these were learned over the last several months of like working out the kinks in this process. Every dashboard ends up being downloaded to Excel. It's like gravity. It's true, especially when it's a finance dashboard. Do you have any last tips for us, Peter? We're out of time. I realized.
Yeah, no, do things on purpose. Don't let work get done on accident. Do it on purpose. Tell people what you're planning to do, and that's all. That's half of change management right there.
Yeah. Well, thanks everyone for coming, and feel free to comment on this with questions. I am always available to answer questions on my LinkedIn. But if you have any really interesting stuff, I'll pass it along to Peter. So thanks, Peter, for coming to this, and thanks everybody who came and participated. It's ending.